So today it's daytime, so now I'm working with the garage door open. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the whole front radiator, empty out the AC the correct way, of course, always, and then obviously empty out the coolant. So if you're not familiar with emptying out the coolant with these cars, there's a little drain, little plug right here. It's a 6 millimeter, I believe. Yep, 6 millimeter. So go ahead and drain that out. As that is draining, you can go ahead and open up the cap to let so you don't create a vacuum or a suction in there. There, coolant's draining. Cap is cracked open, and once that's done, empty out the AC, and then eventually just remove the whole front radiator support. Right, so the front radiator support is done. So after further investigation, obviously now here's a better view of the where it broke off. And after further inspection, see if you can see. I don't know if there's the rod, and it's twisted, like pretty bad. And you can see the second rod over there, cylinder number 2. I don't see any. I guess once I tear down the motor, the engine, I'll be able to see how bad that second cylinder on the rod is. And also, right there, I don't know if you can see that big old gouge right there. Point out with the light right over here. So that looks pretty bad. So obviously, even just this alone is a goner. Alright, so it's another day. Here's a little behind the scenes of the chaos. So a quick update. I don't remember exactly what I recorded last, but so when I was looking at the supercharger, after the serpentine belt was after I took off the serpentine belt, I went ahead and see if the supercharger was damaged or if it was like seized up, which I fingers crossed that it wasn't, which it wasn't. So it spun freely, but I heard like a whoosh, 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 whoosh sound. So I was like, and I didn't even think about it, to be honest, that there was water sitting inside the supercharger. So I went into pretty much into hurry up 911 rescue mode to get the supercharger off and drain the water. So as you can see, I went ahead, took out the water as much as I can, and if I can do a pretty picture, so I held it up so the water would come out here, but I wasn't really completely satisfied with that. So what I did was I took it apart right from here, from what you can see, and then with some brake clean, first with the little air nozzle, blew through here, get as much water as I can using just air by itself, and after some time I went ahead and used some contact cleaner, kind of the same thing as brake clean, but it does the same thing. And then after that, put a little bit of WD-40 in there to displace the water, hence WD-40. And then I ran it again through with some brake cleaner and let it dry overnight. So right now, it looks clean, as dry as a whistle. I don't know if you can see in there. So yeah, it's pretty good. Looks pretty dry. If you're curious, here's the inside of what this charger looks like. The supercharger looks like. Pretty cool. And this little actuator right here opens up this. So it's pretty hard. I don't want to pinch my fingers, but yeah. So that's the inside if you're curious. And let me see if I can spin it for you. So yep, that's how it works. So if you're not familiar with supercharger, just like with any moving parts, it requires a certain type of lubrication depending what it is. So the supercharger, it also requires oil. So the fill and the bleed cap is all one right here. So because there was water inside, I am going to go ahead and then bleed out the empty out the supercharger oil and then put new one, because I'm not going to reuse the old one, because if it somehow got wet, it's not worth chancing it and not doing that maintenance. So after examining, I didn't see any of the valves being bent, but again, it really doesn't matter at this point because I'll be eventually getting another motor and building that, and the valves will actually be upgraded too. So right now I am draining the oil, and is obviously of no surprise, this thing is very watery. So what I've been waiting for has finally arrived. Technically, you don't need to use one of these to empty out the supercharger oil to see how much it is. Someone can use like a little disposable plastic cup and just mark it with a Sharpie. But me being me, I want to know exactly, how many ounces come out of that supercharger. Because I figure it's just more educational to have a little bit more information on exactly or roughly an estimate of how many ounces are coming out of the supercharger. But and then here's the supercharger oil. These are 4 ounces per bottle, so a total of 8. And since I have no idea how much oil is in the supercharger, I just figured I'd just buy 2 of them and be on the safe side. As I've already mentioned before, here's the port where I'm gonna empty out the oil and fill it up back in. And not to get confused with the same process as one would do with like a transmission oil change or a differential change, because with differential or transmission, usually you fill it up until the oil starts coming out from like the threads, and then that's when you cap it off. With a supercharger, it's actually completely different. With a supercharger, depending what supercharger it is, it has a different amount of ounces. So you're gonna, obviously that's why I purchased just this measuring cup, so I have a better idea of how much oil is in this compartment right here. So what's all pretty much inside this compartment are 2 gears. This pulley connects to this gear, and this gear, as this spins, will spin this gear. Simple physics pretty much. So that's how that works, and you don't want to overfill it, nor do you want to underfill it. So I'm going to go ahead and crack this open, bleed it out, and see how much oil is in here, so I have a better estimate in ounces and not just like a little a line, a marking on a blank cup to just have an idea. I just want to know the roughly exact amount of ounces. One thing I want to add, just for a little advice, is I did mark, since I don't know what the torque spec is for the bleed cap, so I went ahead and marked with a little painter's pen to so I know where I need to get to, so I know that's roughly around the correct torque spec. And I did not do it symmetrical on purpose, so at least I did it, if that makes sense, because if I had it symmetrical, like say I had the line right here at the 3 o'clock and one at the 9 o'clock mark, it's just going to be hard. I don't know if I'm at the correct, so I did one like at 3 o'clock and one I believe is at 7 o'clock. So yeah, so just a little, if you're wondering, mark it if you don't know what the torque spec is. Went ahead and emptied out the oil from the supercharger. If just for curiosity, the supercharger is a Eaton TVS 1900, and I'll post it up here. The actual spec of the name of the supercharger, the correct name, if I got it wrong by chance. So you can go ahead and see. Here is the used oil from the supercharger. Granted, it looks like I would say about 5 ounces. And again, this is not the exact amount that was in there, because when you bleed anything out, there's still some residue along the walls or down at the very bottom when you empty something out. So it doesn't empty out all the way, but I know at least that I need to at least put in at least 5 ounces or almost 150 milliliters or cups. I don't know how to do fractions in my head. So this is the used supercharger oil. So I'll say that's about, let's see, actually I'll post it how many miles I've driven the supercharger, so you can see, okay, within this many miles I've driven with a supercharger, this is how the oil gets. So I'm going to actually do a comparison here. So here's the old. I'm going to do a comparison here with the new, what it looks like new used supercharger oil. And here is the new oil. And all here is, before I forget, this is the little cap for the bleed, or the screw cap, fill, port, whatever you want to call it. It does have an O-ring right there. And it is a 3/16, so it's a 3/16 Allen key. Now I'm going to go ahead and dump this out, measure the correct with the new supercharger oil. One thing I want to add before I dump the old oil, doesn't look watery at all. It just looks like normal, used up oil. Okay, so before I move on with the first bottle that I just used, so this is still closed. I already just emptied out the whole first bottle, and I do get exactly 4 ounces as the bottle says. So just so you know, make sure you're not being gypped any less of what the label says. Here is the new oil. Placed it right to the line where I marked it, so you can definitely see a difference, as I already did the comparison to just how clear that is. Okay, so the oil on the supercharger is now filled up. Just here's nice and empty now, so I do have a little bit of spare left in here, so hopefully I don't need to use it, fingers crossed. Since the supercharger is now done with the new oil, I'm gonna go ahead and just put that back together. One thing I've been doing since whenever I get some free time, I've taken out some of the accessories. So here I put the crank pulley, the tensioner, the snub mount. So it's a good idea if you're tackling a job like this. I recommend to have a baggie and labeling what bolts they're for and how many. So here, it's for the supercharger manifold, and there's 14 bolts. So because if you're like me, I like to be organized, especially when it comes to bolts, because I don't have the cool elephant memory to know which bolts go where. So this is what it looks like so far. I moved all the semi accessories up in front. All that is left, I believe, is the hoses all on this side, hoses on this side, and some hoses I need to disconnect on the back side, and then the ECU, removing all the ECU with the harness, all the electrical stuff. Honestly, that's really it, just the hoses on both sides and then the electrical part. Just those 3 sections, I guess, if I want to divide it up into that category. As far as how I'm going to be removing this, because I am kind of limited on space here, so you can see, I only have this much room. So when I first pulled out the engine, I did it with the transmission attached to the engine block, to the engine. So this time, like I said, with the space limited, I'm only going to just remove the engine block. I'm not going to remove it with the transmission. With that being said, it's going to be a new approach for me. I've never done it with the transmission in place and just removing the engine out solo, but I think this will be a good, new challenge, I guess, and hopefully it won't be as difficult. I know it's been done before, and there's things that, as far as like getting to the bolts that connect the transmission to the engine, if I have trouble, I don't think I'll have trouble, but if I do, I'm human. I'll definitely reach out for help for those that have done it, because I know it's, like I said, it's been done before, so I know it's doable. So that's about it, what I have for this video. The next video, I'll just do a little bit more recording of, doing the hoses on both sides, driver and passenger, and then the electrical harness. And then also in the next video, I'll have an update with the engine that I'm going to be using. Right now I'm in touch with somebody who does have a spare engine, so that's a good thing. With all that stuff being said, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and hope you guys have a good one. See ya.